You can do good, be a man of integrity, treat others with respect and keep your principles unwavering. Still, this does not guarantee that the world will recognize you, thank you, or even notice your presence. Stoicism teaches us that the control we have is only over our actions, not over the effects they have on others. Being good, fair, and attentive is not a bargaining chip to receive affection, validation, or desire. When you act virtuously expecting something in return, you're not being noble. You're just negotiating with your dignity. And if the currency you offer is your very essence, the change will almost always come in the form of contempt. The truth is hard but liberating. You can be anything a woman says she wants, and yet she ignores you. And this isn't about you, it's about her phase, about her values, which may be distorted, fragile, or centered on passing vanities. The Stoic stance in this scenario is not to revolt. It's understanding that life is like that. Things are not as we deserve, they are as they are. And freedom is born when we stop basing our worth on the reactions of others. You continue to be valuable even when you are not seen. Many get lost trying to understand what they did wrong when they are ignored. The answer is often nothing. The biggest lesson here is not to let the indifference of the other define your mood, your self-esteem, or your next steps. The Stoic does not live to please. He lives by his principles. And if someone doesn't recognize that, he just goes on, steadfast, serene, and unwavering. There is a dangerous illusion that by being good, kind, and present, you automatically become desirable. But desire is not born of kindness, it is born of the perception of value. And value in the real world is perceived through scarcity, trust, posture, consistency. Stoicism teaches that we should not depend on the gaze of others to define our brilliance. When you're good just to please, you're selling yourself cheap. When it's good, because it's part of your essence, you live in peace, even if you're not recognized for it. A woman can desire more, the one who stands firm, who knows how to say no, who doesn't beg for crumbs. Not because he mistreats her, but because he shows that he values himself. He doesn't give his all expecting affection. He gives wisely and saves the best for those who also offer the best. The man who understands this stops seeking approval and begins to act out of conviction. That changes everything, because true desire is not born of obligation, but of respect, and respect only flourishes where there is balance. Trying to buy love with kindness is a common mistake. True love can't be bought. It is conquered. And the achievement is not in the flowers you give, but in the firm ground you walk on, where she sees that you don't bend for any smile. Value is not arrogance, it is consciousness, and those who live with conscience arouse more desire than those who hide behind favors, giving too much to those who do not ask, offering without balance, insisting when there is no reciprocity. All this does not make you more admirable, it makes you inconvenient. The Stoic understands that giving should be an act of virtue, not despair. When you shower a person with favors hoping that they will desire you, you are trying to manipulate fate. But fate, as Seneca says, does not bend to human whims, and the emotions of others much less. The only thing you can control is your intention and your attitude. Too many favors, especially when they are not requested, generate a sense of debt. And no one likes to feel indebted to someone they didn't choose. This creates discomfort, and the discomfort turns into rejection that is often silent but painful. Virtue is in knowing how to dose, to realize that it is not about stopping being good, but about being good with wisdom. And wisdom, in this case, is to observe, is there an exchange? Is there respect? Or am I just trying to buy love with my actions? A Stoic heart doesn't beg. He offers, once, maybe two, but then he withdraws with dignity. Because the silence of those who respect themselves is better than the noise of those who beg for attention. Favors do not generate desire, they generate weight. And no one wants what weighs more than inspires. Answer everything quickly. Send good morning every day. Comment on every photo, like every story. It seems affectionate, but it is excess. And the excess, when it is not reciprocated, becomes silent humiliation. The Stoic doesn't beg for attention, he observes. The problem with uncontrolled attention is that it turns into a subtle form of persecution, not because you're bad, but because you've lost track of your own center. You've forgotten that your attention has value, that it should be given to those who honor it. In Stoicism, learning to restrain oneself is a powerful virtue. It is through restraint that you train your mind to master your impulses. It's not coldness, it's emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence is seductive. When you give too much attention to those who don't value you, you're educating the other person to treat you with disregard. You're saying, even if you ignore me, I'll stay here. And that, in love, doesn't inspire, repels. A man who knows himself does not need constant signs to know his worth. He offers his presence calmly, and he withdraws his energy lightly when he realizes that it is not welcome. No drama, without begging. Attention is not a cheap gift. It is a gift. And whoever throws it away once does not deserve to receive it again. Many men confuse insistence with perseverance. They think that continuing to invest even without return is a proof of love. But Stoicism teaches insisting where there is no reciprocity is not a virtue. It is wounded vanity trying to take revenge for one's own abandonment. When you insist on someone who doesn't want you, you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for you, because it hurts too much to admit that you were not chosen, that it's not enough for that person, and you try desperately to prove that you deserve it. But no one deserves crumbs, and no one is more worthy because they accept little. Quite the opposite. Those who accept little teach the other to offer you less and less. It is a vicious cycle, which begins with the lack of self-love and ends in humiliation disguised as romanticism. The Stoic turns away from what hurts him, not out of pride, but out of wisdom, because he understands that everything that requires him to diminish himself is not love. It's attachment, and attachment is the poison of the soul. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone. You just need to live so honestly with yourself that others recognize it or not. But that no longer matters because you're no longer trying to fill holes with borrowed affection. Reciprocity is the basis. Without it, everything falls apart. And a wise man does not build his life on unstable ground. Being ignored hurts. There is no way to romanticize this. When you text them and they don't respond, when you try hard to please and are received coldly, the pain is real. But what Stoicism teaches you is that this pain doesn't have to control your actions. Accepting that you've been ignored is the first step to regaining your power. It is not a question of cowardly resignation, but of courageous acceptance. You don't deny what you feel, you just choose not to get lost in the emotion. You look at the rejection and say, "That's okay, it's not up to me." The Stoic man does not need to be reciprocated to go on in peace. He understands that the value of a gesture is not in the reaction it provokes, but in the intention with which it was made. If she ignored it, it's her problem. You did what you believed to be right. Period. Every time you accept reality as it is, without creating stories, without trying to force results, you grow. You become a less reactive, more aware, more serene man, and it is this serenity that truly builds respect, including your own. Many wear themselves out, trying to decipher the silence of the other, but this is a waste of vital energy. Silence speaks, absence responds, and the Stoic learns to listen to what has not been said, and to act on that, not on his illusions. Being ignored is a pain, but insisting where there is no space is a choice. Stoicism gives you back control over this choice. You believe that being generous will make her value you, that being attentive, present, and dedicated will make her recognize who you are. But you don't realize that by giving everything for nothing, you are teaching the other to treat you as an expendable. The Stoic knows that all our actions educate, and that, if there is no balance, we will be reinforcing harmful behaviors without realizing it. When you give more than you receive on an ongoing basis, you are saying, "I take little, give me crumbs, I'm happy with that." People learn fast. If each gesture of coldness of hers is received with more affection from you, her brain will understand, just ignore him and he will go after him. This is not her fault. You are the one teaching it. You are reinforcing the disrespect with love. Love for the Stoic is not a tool of control. It is not something that is given to win affection back. It is something that is offered wisely, and wisdom is knowing when to retreat, to expect reciprocity, to preserve yourself when the environment becomes toxic. Relationships are not about who gives the most, but about who respects each other first. Are you being an example of self-worth or despair disguised as romanticism? This is the question that separates the conscious man from the conditioned man. Train the other to treat you with respect by living as if you are already worthy of them. When a simple good morning requires 30 messages, 2 calls, and 3 failed attempts to contact you, it is a sign that something is wrong. And not with her, with you, with its relationship, with its own value. Stoicism talks about living rightly, clearly, purposefully. When you drag yourself emotionally for a minimal gesture, you are far from it. He is dominated by neediness, by the wounded ego, by the need to be accepted at any cost. You don't have to humble yourself for attention. A man's true worth lies not in how hard he strives to be noticed, but in how much he stands firm, even when he is not seen. This is the strength that no good morning can give you, and that no absence can take away. If to receive the minimum you need to give the maximum, this balance is broken, and you have no obligation to keep playing this game. In fact, the Stoic doesn't even play that game. He observes, analyzes, and decides based on reality, not fantasy. The question you should ask is not, "What else can I do to get her to answer me?" but rather, "Why do I continue to allow myself this kind of treatment?" This question is hard, but it sets you free, and only those who are free can truly love. Stop dragging your feet, uprising. Look in the mirror and ask yourself if it's worth continuing to exchange your peace for lukewarm messages. The problem with accepting little is that, over time, you convince yourself that you deserve little, and then what was an exception becomes the rule. You start calling love what in fact is dependence, and he settles for crumbs, thinking it's a feast. The Stoic never allows himself to live in emotional scarcity, because he knows that the first dignity that must be preserved is the inner dignity, the one who says, "I don't need to beg for what is not freely offered." Accepting little repeatedly is an addiction. And like any addiction, it destroys you little by little. You start to live in the hope of the next crumb, the next moment of affection, the slightest gesture of attention. This is not love. It is self-abandonment. The Stoic mind rightly combats this. You observe the cycle. You understand the imbalance. And with courage, he chooses to leave, not because he is angry, but because he has finally realized that he is losing himself in the name of an illusion. True love doesn't have to break you to exist. It adds up, it expands, it elevates. If what you call love is making you smaller, that's not love. It is attachment to suffering, and suffering is only meant to be overcome, not worshipped. You are whole. And whole men do not live on crumbs. One of the biggest mistakes a man can make is expecting a woman to change on her own, without him changing his stance first. In Stoicism, we learn that we educate the world by the way we position ourselves, and if you tolerate disrespect, you teach the other to continue disrespecting. There is no point in complaining about her attitudes if, with each mistake, you respond with more gifts, more attention, and more submission. You're rewarding the wrong behavior. And the human brain is simple. What is rewarded is repeated. You want it to change, to value you, to treat you with reciprocity, but you don't value yourself. You give yourself entirely to those who only extend a hand, and that's not nobility, it's emotional weakness masquerading as romanticism. The Stoic understands that the world only changes when you change, when you stop accepting what hurts you, when you set boundaries firmly and respectfully, not out of revenge, but out of self-respect. This is how to educate a relationship. If you don't set clear rules about how you want to be treated, don't blame the other person for overstepping your bounds. Blame yourself for not making them visible. Respect begins within and manifests itself without. It will only change when you stop accepting what destroys you. The greatest fear of many men is not loneliness, it is silence. It is the time when there is no one to answer your messages, no one to fill the void that you yourself have created within yourself. The Stoic knows that, before relating to someone, he needs to learn to live with himself. Being alone is not a punishment. It is an opportunity. It's when you look in the mirror without filters, without distractions, and see who you really are. And this exercise, although painful, is liberating, because there is born the chance to rebuild. The fear of loneliness, in fact, is fear of oneself. It is fear of facing one's own mistakes, the emptiness, the traumas that have been pushed under the rug in the name of failed relationships. The Stoic does not shy away from this. He dives because he understands that he only heals what he faces, that only the one who takes responsibility evolves. Being alone is the soil where self-sufficiency is planted, where one learns to live without depending on applause, company, or approval. And it's only when you feel complete on your own that a relationship becomes a choice, not a necessity. It becomes a complement and not a crutch. This is the difference between loving with freedom and holding on to fear. The mirror does not lie, and the man who has the courage to look at himself has the courage to change. Most emotional downfalls don't start with a betrayal, a rejection, or an outward abandonment. It starts much earlier, when you stop listening to yourself, taking care of yourself, valuing yourself. That's where the real abandonment is born, yours. The Stoic understands that the basis of all strength is self-care, not in the superficial sense of the word, but in the inner commitment to treat yourself with respect, not to expose yourself to environments that hurt you, not to accept less than you would give to a friend. Self-esteem is not a magical feeling that appears when someone compliments you. It's a daily build based on the choices you make. And every time you force yourself to accept something that hurts your principles, a piece of your self-esteem breaks. Self-abandonment is when you keep silent in the face of disrespect, when you continue in a place where you are not welcome, when you justify the unjustifiable to maintain an illusion of love. This is not romanticism, it is self-harm. A man who respects himself does not tolerate that which diminishes him, not because he thinks he's too much, but because he knows himself. And the Stoic lives precisely this philosophy: know thyself and live according to your nature. If you want to regain your self-esteem, start by rescuing yourself from where you lost yourself. You think you're being romantic by insisting, by keeping trying, by offering everything even when there's no return. But deep down, he knows that this is not love. It is necessity, and necessity disguised as virtue is a dangerous lie. Stoicism reminds us that virtue is sufficient on its own. It does not need to be recognized, rewarded, or applauded. You're good because it's your moral duty, not because you expect a kiss in return. When there is expectation, virtue is contaminated. Insistence, when it does not find reciprocity, becomes attachment. And attachment is one of the greatest enemies of peace. The Stoic man seeks to act with excellence, but never forces his presence where he is not welcome. It's not romantic to constantly sacrifice yourself for someone who doesn't see the value in it. It is self-deception. It is to create an illusion where there is no fertile soil. It is to spend energy on a fantasy while reality cries out for change. If you do good expecting to receive love, you are negotiating. And relationships aren't business. They're sincere exchanges between wholes. When you need to reduce yourself to fit, you are no longer the one who is present in the relationship. True virtue does not cry out, does not beg, does not beg. She lives, silent, steadfast, and admirable. It's not about what it does to you, it's about what you allow them to do. When you continue in a relationship where you are mistreated, ignored, diminished, you are telling the world and yourself that this is what you deserve. The Stoic never bows to disrespect. He understands that dignity is a man's most valuable asset, and that when someone treats him badly, it says much more about her than about him. But what you accept says everything about you. Staying where there is no respect is a silent declaration of low self-esteem. It's saying, I'm not important enough to demand more. And this belief, repeated, becomes identity, and identity shapes your entire life. You can even love someone, but if that love requires you to annul yourself, it has ceased to be love and has become an addiction. And affection addiction is as destructive as any, because you become addicted to the idea that you need to be accepted by those who reject you. The Stoic chooses the short pain of separation to the long pain of continual humiliation, because he knows that the suffering of the end is temporary, but the suffering of abandoning himself can last a lifetime. Does she treat you like garbage? Then get out of the trash, because garbage is the place of those who do not value themselves. There's no point in wanting to have a healthy relationship if you're chaos inside. There's no point in demanding respect if you don't know how to respect yourself. Balanced love begins with self-control, and this Stoicism teaches like no one else. Being your own master does not mean being cold, closed, or unattainable. It means knowing what you feel, what you want, and how far you're willing to go. It is to live with awareness, and consciousness generates limits, and limits preserve the soul. Imbalance is born of lack, of the fear of losing, of the desire to be accepted at any cost. But a Stoic man doesn't trade his peace for a little affection. He loves with intensity, but never with dependence. From the moment you learn to take care of yourself, to listen to yourself, to welcome yourself, you stop waiting for the other to do it for you. And then, yes, love can blossom in a mature, light, and deep way, because there is no more fear there, only choice. Balance is knowing how to give without emptying yourself. It is knowing how to give in without getting lost. It is to love without destroying oneself. And this only happens when you learn to suffice yourself. Not as a shield, but as a solid foundation on which any relationship can rest. The Stoic loves not out of necessity, but out of abundance. And this is the strongest and rarest form of love that exists.